What is up, everybody? This is Classic Movie Gush, number 9. I am Clay Morgan with Melissa Tagg, and today we are talking about drama, a little movie called Double Indemnity. Dun, dun, dun.
That's weird, we did that at the same time.
You have to, when that's the sound that is mandated you make.
Especially when it's a movie about murder.
Murder. It's a dark movie, as a matter of fact. I believe that it is film noir, and that noir means dark, black film,
sure.
right? Film noir is French.
Exactly what it means.
I think so.
Don't anybody, yeah.
So, Double Indemnity is a movie about an insurance salesman.
Yeah.
Played by Fred MacMurray, probably more famously known as a guy from some goofy Disney movies like the professor who created Flubber the first time.
Yeah, and
he's that.
I'm totally going to interrupt with a hometown story now.
No, bring it.
Fred MacMurray was in a Disney movie called Follow Me Boys, which is about the Boy Scouts, and it's based on a book that I can't remember the name of. It's like For God and Country or something like that. Based on a book by a guy from my hometown, McKinley Cantor, who won a Pulitzer Prize for another book called Andersonville. It's about a Confederate prisoner of war camp.
Civil War camp.
So really, I'm connected to Fred MacMurray.
It is. So you're basically
I had to tell that story.
You're basically like one degree of separation.
Yeah, and another movie that we have talking about is Best Years of Our Lives, I think. That's based on another McKinley Cantor book. So
interesting.
Webster City, Iowa churns out the writers. That's what I have to say about that.
And now Melissa Tagg.
I'm pretty sure my rom-com is going to win a Pulitzer.
Yes. Yeah, so we didn't talk about that other movie. We've talked about talking about it.
We've talked about talking about it, yes.
Yeah, that was just to clarify.
If we do, I'll probably tell the same story all over again.
Okay, so speaking of writers, let's talk about where Double Indemnity came from. You're feeling good tonight. I can tell you really like this one.
I am feeling really good. Okay, do you want me to talk about where it came from? There was like a
sure. You can talk about James Cain?
Yeah, he wrote a did he write a novella or a novel or something? He wrote something based on an actual based on an actual case of murder, and so it's based on that.
Ruth Snyder was a woman who, in 1927, had a guy named Judd kill her husband, and it was one of those sensational trials of the 1920s when, what's his name? James Cain was a journalist. He covered the courtroom story, and famously, Ruth Snyder was executed in the electric chair, and it was like, they actually took a photo of it, and it was one of these like really sensationalist moments.
Yeah.
So this story was like the basis for James Cain. He went to Hollywood with dreams of becoming a famous screenwriter, and all of the studios agreed. They were ready to hand him all kinds of money for this story, Double Indemnity, except what went wrong?
The Hays Code got in the way.
Once again, the Hays Production Code.
Always comes back to that.
Because you just can't show anything too, I don't know, realistic, not under the Hays Code of the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this movie's got some stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That the Hays Code wouldn't like, you mean?
Adultery.
Murder. Yeah, I was going to say
sexual
adultery.
Innuendo.
Lots of it. And this is, the version that we watched, they cleaned up a lot so that they could get it past the code eventually. So... Yeah. I don't know what the original looked like, but
here's what I know. Eventually, that Raymond Chandler, the famous detective novel author, the hard-boiled fiction writer, he was brought in to work on the screen adaptation with Billy Wilder, and it was that process really that brought the story to the screen. And one thing I know, and we'll talk about where the movie goes, they did cut off the original ending, which actually ends with a gas chamber scene, which would have been closer to the real life story. And I believe there was also a version where the characters committed double suicide at the end, and different things like this. But we should round out the cast. Not only is it Fred MacMurray, the female lead, Barbara Stanwyck, very famous actress, and one of the guys that I like, Edward G. Robinson, in a great supporting role. So what did you like about... Well, first of all, do you like Double Indemnity? I haven't asked you.
I do like it. It's not like... I'm not going to watch it to feel good about the world and life in general, but it's really fascinating to watch from a movie-making standpoint, from an acting standpoint. It really kind of redefined the film noir genre. And then also the acting is just great. Barbara Stanwyck and Fred MacMurray are at the top of their game, absolutely. So, yeah, I do like it.
Yeah, they said a lot of people turned down. It seems like we're always talking about how many people turned down the roles, in this era of Hollywood. Fred MacMurray, by the time Billy Wilder came to him, he said, "You're crazy. Like, I can't do this. I'm a goofy, quirky actor." And Fred MacMurray said, "Never did I dream that I was about to make the best movie of my life." The story. Go ahead.
It was the same, I think, with Barbara Stanwyck. They offered her. She was excited to do it eventually, but when they first offered it to her, she was kind of like, "I don't know if I can play a heavy-hitting killer." And I don't know if it was Billy Wilder or somebody said to her, "Are you a mouse or an actress?" And she said, "I'm an actress." And he said, "Well, then take the role." And she did, and it was one of the best roles of her life as well.
Yeah, Billy Wilder said that to her. Of course, he's a legendary director. Some would consider this his best work. He certainly has other titles, though, that could be in the conversation. You mentioned that the whole, film noir thing. This is actually the movie that kind of started it, and it was a way around the production code in a sense because they were allowed to do these crime dramas, and the Hays Code actually required. I was reading about this. If justice is served, there was a way to do acceptable, and that criminals must pay on screen for their transgressions.
Nice.
So you can have murderers and adulterers as long as the justice is shown. So it's fascinating that violence in a punitive sense was allowed, but senseless violence, or whatever, they didn't want to glamorize crime in any way, I suppose.
I think it was reflective of the time period because, the code started in the early 1930s, but then it really took off kind of in the mid to late 1930s, and then there was World War II, and so, I don't know, I think the whole violence is okay as long as it's for a just cause.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of understand that.
And there were certainly just as many audience members who were repulsed as there were probably a lot more who were really attracted to this new gritty storytelling style. If you're not familiar with what film noir is, of course, I think Humphrey Bogart probably made it real famous in some of his roles. The whole voiceover narration where the detective or the cop is like, it was 9:15 when I realized that I didn't have my perp. Like, they're basically telling you the story in their head, and there's all this dark lighting. I was reading about Venetian blind lighting. There's lines and everything. It kind of hints at the fact that the characters are in prison. I thought that was interesting. So that's film noir, and now, of course, it's legendary. It's been around forever. But it never looked better than in the 40s and 50s in those black and white classic films. I don't think. I would agree. So the story is right off the bat pretty sultry, as this salesman basically shows up on a sales call, and Barbara Stanwyck comes out in a towel. That was one of the things they had to change. They had to get her a bigger towel. Right. And we should point out that she famously wore that horrible wig, which honestly, it didn't stand out to me too much. But what do you know about the wig?
The wig is really bad. It's really, if you read some things, people will say that Billy Wilder did the wig on purpose, and then other accounts will say that he picked out the wig, and then about halfway through filming realized how horrible it looked, and tried to say that it was done on purpose. And somebody compared her to George Washington. So I think it's a bad looking wig, but
I kind of buy. It sounded like he was always pretty consistent on saying, "I wanted her to look cheap and fake and sleazy," and the
Mhm.
wig helped.
Which
The wig
she
helped do
does.
that to her. Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's like gaming right from the beginning, and
Uh-huh.
he is clearly not walking away. And the more
Mhm.
they start to think about it, this is where the 1927 true life story comes in. A double indemnity clause is death by accident in a certain condition could yield twice the payoff of a normal accidental death. And they arrange a plot where. What? Why are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing at what they do.
Why don't you tell it?
Well,
It's a good
bas
one.
basically what they do is they arrange for a guy to be on a train, only they kill the guy before he's going to be on the train, and Walter Neff, Fred McMurray's character, gets on the train in the guy's place, jumps off, they put the guy on the tracks, and boom, it's done. And it would have been perfect,
Done.
except all these things start piling up and happening and unraveling their perfect crime.
One of the
I
things that
don't
I
know.
really love, there's so many things you pick out when you're watching movies. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes they'll just do like an establishing shot of a city, and you're just like, "Ooh, cool!
Hmm.
It's New York in 1950, or it's suburbia in 1932." Like that's interesting to me.
Hmm.
And this movie features a grocery store very prominently, and I think it's so neat just to look at a grocery store in 1944. Did you think
That's
that at
true.
all?
I did think about that. That's true. And you could see the prices on some of the things, which was great.
Yeah, like everything's 10,
Yeah.
15, or 17 cents. And they
Uh-huh.
arranged all the canned goods in pyramids. And that would have been
Yeah.
1944. Would have been that would have been during. That's when the movie was made, the World War II era. Is it set in
Hmm.
1944? They don't really say when it's
It's
set.
it's it's set in 1938. And
Okay, so it's
the
set.
only yeah, yeah. The only reason I know that is because one of the goofs in the movie is Fred McMurray makes a joke about the Philadelphia story in it, and that's one of the anachronisms. Philadelphia story didn't come out till 1940, but this movie is set in 1938. So,
Interesting.
that's the only reason I know that's why it was set then. But
Maybe they
yeah.
wanted to set it before the war years to kind of
Oh yeah, maybe
this is
during the
reality when
war. Yeah,
yeah
because maybe during the war the guy would have been at war and she wouldn't have been able to kill him. And
yeah it would have been
yeah.
horrible for all those schemers if they had to actually be off somewhere else.
Yes, that would
So
be bad.
little things like that. I think it's one of the real treats of watching classic film is just to see an America that's gone, to see cities
Yeah.
and towns and buildings like that. I really enjoy that. What else did
Hmm.
you like about this movie? What would you say was your favorite part? Did you have one
my
that stood
fa-
out?
my favorite part is when Fred McMurray tells her, "I don't want you to hang, baby." Sorry, it's my favorite line in the whole thing.
I don't want you
I
to
like,
hang, baby. He
yeah,
says
it's
that a
my
lot.
favorite line. He says "baby" a lot. Yeah, I like watching Fred McMurray try to decide whether he's going to do this, and this is the thing. This is the thing that this movie makes me think, and it especially made me think this time. Do I sympathize for Fred McMurray? That is the thing that I always think about. You obviously don't sympathize for the wife. She's just horrible. She wants to kill everybody. She's bad. But Fred McMurray's character, like one of the reasons film noir starts usually with somebody at the beginning kind of telling the whole story is to build your sympathy right away for that character.
Yeah.
Well, this time it's the bad guy telling the story, and so do you feel bad for him or not? And that is the thing that like drives me through the movie. This curiosity of, do I want him to be successful? I kind of do, but
Yeah.
I kind of don't, because he's bad. So I like that aspect of it. Yeah.
I agree. I think we'll on this one we'll assume that maybe a bunch of people haven't watched it, so we'll leave the ending in suspense because it is a
Oh
good
yeah.
ending. I think it's a very
It's an
very good
effective
ending.
ending.
Yes,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
what I will say though is I won't tell you what happens, but I definitely was finding myself pulling for him.
Mhm.
It's kind of like one big confessional, and the thing is like this character, I forget Edward G. Robinson's character's name now.
Keys.
Keys, Keys, but
Yeah.
he always sniffs out when there's something dirty about a situation. He always sniffs it out, and
Yep.
probably this is one of those ways that if you were to do a movie like this, matter of fact, this exact story was redone like for television, and then it was like it's been done under different titles in Hollywood for years. But this would be the kind of story that might be drawn up differently today. It could be, but I think Wilder got the ending right for sure.
Yeah,
I liked
they did a
it.
good
I
job
had
with
watched
the
this
ending.
movie before. I do not remember enjoying the film as much the first time, and I got so into it this time. I really think this is going to be moving up my list. It's been ranked in one of the all-time best movies by the AFI and all those other places.
Yep.
So Fred McMurray leaves the hard-boiled scene. Barbara Stanwyck becomes an icon in it. She's kind of like memorialized for that film noir
She really is.
scene. And Edward G. Robinson, he just does his thing. We're going to have to do a movie of his sometime.
Yeah, he's in a lot of good movies.
He is. He is. Any final thoughts on Double Indemnity?
Well, it's definitely a good movie to check out.
Give me some facts.
I will give you a fact. The guy that helped to write this, Raymond Chandler, he also, he appears in the movie for one thing. He's in a chair outside a building when Fred McMurray walks past.
That's right.
There's a fact for you. He also wrote The Big Sleep, which is a really great movie with Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, directed by Howard Hawks, which is great. And he and Billy Wilder did not get along at all. So it's kind of fun if you ever have a chance to read about Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler basically acting like little kids on the set. That's pretty fun.
We're going to have to pick and choose. First of all, we haven't even got to Bogart yet. We're going to have to start with Casablanca, and then
no, yeah.
We're going to have to work through that. Matter of fact, that clip of Raymond Chandler, it's like 16 minutes in, he looks up from a book or something, and they said that that's the only known video footage of Raymond Chandler.
Really?
Is that clip. Yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We got big movie number 10 coming up, so we're going to have to figure out what that's going to be. Yeah. I saw somebody suggested Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yeah. Cary Grant.
We are listening to the suggestions, so keep them coming. We're keeping a list, and we're going to do a movie a week. So that's it for now. We'll see you on the next Classic Movie Gush.